All right, people. So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our current affairs lecture series. Now, today we are going to cover IR, international relations related current affairs. So all the important news items from the past 1 week with respect to the subject of international relations shall be covered in today's lecture. Now, let me say this again. I repeat this in every lecture, but let me say this again. That make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. It should be a daily habit of yours. Only then this lecture series would be useful for you. So you just have to spend 45 minutes on this current affairs section of ours. Okay, 30 minutes of the lecture and 15 minutes of revising that lecture from the notes provided by us. The notes are shared on our Telegram channel and the link to our channel is provided in the comment section below. So do spend those necessary 15 minutes. All right then, enough of the introduction. Let's straight away dive into today's lecture. So let's begin. So current affairs IR July part 3. And here are the topics that we are going to cover. And let me tell you, well, it's not good news for India. So topic number 1 is Bab el Mandeb Strait blockade. Another strait is about to be blockaded, and it is going to be blockaded by a proxy of Iran. So Iran has some role to play in this, and this would have huge consequences for India. So we'll talk about this issue. Then we'll talk about Chahbahar port, Indian investments under threat. Well, USA is bombing Iran and it has started bombing Chahbahar region also, where India has huge stakes in this Chahbahar port. Chahbahar port is not just important for India strategically. India has also made a lot of investments in this port which are now under threat. So we'll talk about this issue. Okay. And in the end, we'll talk about Trump's 20% Hormuz fee plan. Every ship that is going to pass through Strait of Hormuz, well, America is saying, or Donald Trump is saying, that we are going to charge a fees for it. This would, well, make things expensive. Inflation would skyrocket. Though this plan is not legally tenable, okay, legally, as per international law, Donald Trump cannot do this, but still, he's threatening to do this. So let's see what happens. Nonetheless, this is the third topic. So these are the 3 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one. Starting with topic number 1, and that is Bab el Mandeb Strait blockade. Now you see, for its energy supplies, India relies on Strait of Hormuz. But there is an alternative route also, and Saudi Arabia was basically exploring that trade route to supply oil to its eastern nations like India, China and all. And that route passed through Red Sea, Bab el Mandeb Strait, Gulf of Aden, Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, and then India. Now, the country that lies at this Bab el Mandeb Strait is Yemen. And in Yemen, there is this proxy group of Iran called Houthis, which control a lot of territory near Bab el Mandeb Strait. And they have decided, or they have threatened Saudi Arabia, well, that they would blockade that area. Now, this would, basically, they are doing this to punish Saudi Arabia, so that Saudi Arabia is not able to export its crude oil. But the punishment is going to get extended to India as well. Already we are suffering from Strait of Hormuz crisis. Now another strait would be blockaded, and this would trouble India like anything, because India doesn't rely on this strait for its energy supplies. It also relies on this strait for its trade with Europe. We'll look at all these things, okay? We'll look at the implications on India as well. So let's discuss this, okay? So Bab el Mandeb Strait blockade, okay? So this is the context. Yemen's Houthi movement, Ansar Allah, declared an immediate naval blockade on Saudi Arabia-linked shipping transiting the Bab el Mandeb Strait. Okay, this declaration followed an attack on Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, international airport, and long-standing tensions between Saudi Arabia and Houthis in Yemen. Now, this is a time when India is already suffering from the Hormuz crisis, and now this Bab el Mandeb Strait crisis. Well, it would be double blockade, double whammy for India. First of all, you need to be aware of the location. Okay, where does this strait lie? How is it important geopolitically? Okay, geostrategically. So this is Strait of Hormuz. This is Bab el Mandeb Strait. So as you can see, the Bab el Mandeb Strait over here, it connects Red Sea with Gulf of Aden, and then Gulf of Aden opens into Arabian Sea, and from here to India. Now, when the Strait of Hormuz given the threats in Strait of Hormuz, well, Saudi Arabia isn't able to supply its crude oil to other Asian nations, because Strait of Hormuz is kind of not a nice place to pass your ships from. So Saudi Arabia was building a pipeline, okay, so that through that pipeline they will transport their oil from their oil fields to the Red Sea, and from Red Sea ships would take it to India or other countries. Now, in this region, the orange shaded region is controlled by Houthis, and Houthis are saying that they would blockade this Bab al-Mandab Strait also. Now, this Bab al-Mandab Strait is a narrow choke point, okay, just 20 kilometers in width. This strait, if blockaded, would not only block Saudi Arabia's supplies to India, crude oil supplies, energy supplies, which are important for India's economy, it would also block India's trade with Europe, because India uses this trade route for its trade with, well, European nations. Okay, so ships come from leave from the western ports of India, they pass through this Red Sea, Suez Canal, Mediterranean Sea, and then Europe. So this is a huge problem. Now, Bab al-Mandab Strait in Arabic means Gate of Tears. It is a narrow maritime choke point connecting Red Sea with Gulf of Aden. It handles 12% of global traffic and nearly 25% of global container traffic, 12% of global trade. Facilitates the passage of 4.8 million barrels per day of crude oil and refined petroleum products towards Europe, Asia, and America. Okay, so this is the strategic importance of this trade. Now, the double choke point crisis. Why? Because Hormuz is blocked. So because Hormuz was blocked, so Saudi Arabia was looking for an alternative route. Saudi Arabia built this east-west pipeline from its Abaqaiq oil fields to the Red Sea port of Yanbu to bypass Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. Now Red Sea would be blockaded. By blockading or targeting Saudi crude oil leaving Yanbu via Bab al-Mandab, Houthis threaten Saudi Arabia's primary export corridor, backup export corridor. The primary export corridor was Hormuz, Persian Gulf. Now this was the backup option. This would go away. Okay. Cumulative global exposure. Combined disruptions at Hormuz and Bab al-Mandab risk bottlenecking nearly 25% of world oil and gas supplies. Now, if this gets blockaded, this supply gets blockaded, demand is pretty high, supply gets restricted by 25%. This would lead to significant energy inflation. And when energy becomes expensive, transportation becomes expensive. When transportation becomes expensive, everything becomes expensive because goods are transported from their factory position to consumer position. So inflation is a big looming threat on India. Now let's be specific about threats for India, okay? So let's specifically look at implications for India. First of all, import costs, volume vulnerability. What is volume vulnerability? Saudi Arabia supplies 10 to 14.5% of India's daily crude imports. So India is heavily dependent on Saudi Arabia. And Houthis have threatened to block Saudi Arabia only. So this supply gets, well, restricted, blocked. Disruption directly pushes up spot freight rates, shipping rates, maritime war risk insurance premium. When ships have to travel on international waters, they have to take insurance also. Now the insurance premiums charged by insurance companies would also rise. And landed costs of crude oil, LPG, and because natural gas is used in fertilizer manufacturing, all these things become expensive. Okay. Plus, there is an alternative trade route. If Bab al-Mandab Strait is blockaded, well, India can use Cape of Good Hope route. So if India wants to trade with Europe, it will have to bypass the entire continent of Africa. Okay. This is Cape of Good Hope route, but it is long. Transit delay via Cape of Good Hope adds 4,000 nautical miles and 10 to 14 days to Asia, Europe, Middle East trade. So this is a problem. Plus, you need to know this fact because this would increase India's current account deficit to levels that India cannot even imagine right now or India cannot tolerate right now. Because current account deficit increases when your import bill increases. Okay. Every $10 per barrel rise in global crude expands India's import bill, adding pressure on Indian rupee. Rupee is going to further depreciate, okay, and pushing domestic inflation. Well, in the near future, India is going to suffer economically, and that's all because of external factors. Okay, now what is the way forward? Maritime security operations. Indian ships should be escorted by Indian Navy so as to ensure security. India should build strategic petroleum reserves. India already has strategic petroleum reserves, but India needs to expand them, build more capacity. And diplomatic engagement. Use India's diplomacy to basically cool down temperatures in the Middle East, which seems impossible right now because why would they listen to India? They have internal issues which are really problematic, the Middle Eastern powers. So let's see what happens. But things don't look good for India as well as the entire world. Okay. And another bad news for India. Let's move on to next topic, okay? And that is Chahbahar Port, Indian investments under threat. You see, listen to me very carefully over here. You see, India wants to trade with Central Asia, okay? Central Asia, and from Central Asia to Russia. India wants to do that. But India does not have a land corridor for doing that trade. India has to use oceans for that, okay? So it's a longer route. India lies very close to Central Asia, and if there was a proper land corridor, India could have had very good trade relations with Central Asian countries and Russia. But who is blocking our land corridor? Pakistan. Because between India and Central Asia, there lies Pakistan, and Pakistan does not give us access. So India searched a way around that. India decided to build a port or a terminal in Chahbahar port of Iran. So Indian ships are going to land in Chahbahar, Iran. From there, there are proper road and rail links into Afghanistan. And from Afghanistan, since we have good relations with Afghanistan, we can enter Central Asian countries of Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and from there to Russia. Plus, we were also building, or we were also part of international north-south trade corridor connecting Russia with Arabian Sea. Okay, so Chahbahar port would be connected to that also. This was really strategic for India, and that is why way back in 2001, India started making investments in this Iranian port of Chahbahar. Plus, Indian presence in Chahbahar is also geopolitically important because China is building Gwadar port in Pakistan, which is around 70 kilometers away from Chahbahar only. They're very close. So China and Pakistan will have a presence in Arabian Sea. Indian Navy also wants some presence in the Arabian Sea, in the nearby countries. So Chahbahar is not just important economically, it is important geostrategically. But there are two threats to it. Number one threat, USA is bombing Iran left, right, and center, and they have started bombing Iran also. So this is a huge problem. Then another problem is, well, USA has applied secondary sanctions, which means anyone who trades with Iran, sanctions, American sanctions would apply on them as well. Okay. Now, India got a specific waiver. That means India got exemption from these secondary sanctions because of good relations with America. So all the other countries were penalized for trading with Iran, but not India. But now that exemption is going to expire, and America has no intention of renewing it. This is the issue. So we have already spent so much money in Chahbahar. Indian policymakers are now thinking that that money is lost and we won't get Chahbahar. There is no utility of Chahbahar given the crisis between America and Iran. This is the issue. So let's take a look at this issue again in detail. All right. So Chahbahar port, Indian investments under threat. Recent US military strikes targeting Iran's Chahbahar maritime surveillance star alongside the expiration of non-renewal of US sanctions waiver exemption. But these two things, American bombing and their refusal to renew this waiver for India. That means if India continues with Chahbahar port, sanctions, American sanctions would apply on India as well. Well, this has threatened this project, these investments. Now take a look at Chahbahar port, how strategically important it was. So India cannot go into Central Asian countries over here. So India thought of Chahbahar port. Ships from Kandla and Mumbai would reach Chahbahar. There is a rail link, Zaranj Delaram Road. Okay. So this rail link would get into Afghanistan. Road links would take it to Kabul. Okay. And from here, India can enter Central Asia. Plus, there was an international north-south corridor, trade corridor between Central Asian countries, India, Iran, and Russia. That is also threatened because the key node on this trade corridor was Chahbahar. Plus, Chahbahar is very close to Gwadar port, where Chinese investments are there, and Pakistan and Chinese presence is here, 70 kilometers away from Chahbahar. So it was strategically important. All of this is going to go away. Okay. Now, to understand the extent of Indian investment, take a look at this table. Okay. India was building a terminal, and under Indian occupation or operation would be this terminal called Shahid Beshti Terminal. Okay. India had spent 120 million prepaid capital investment, 250 million line of credit given to Iran. Okay. US sanction waiver history. It was granted to us in 2018. That means America was applying these sanctions on all the other countries except India. India got this waiver. This waiver is about to expire and America has no intention of renewing it. This is the problem. Now, the strategic importance of Chahbahar, I have mentioned the strategic importance. Let's take a look at the strategic importance of Chahbahar again. Number one, bypass Pakistan and access Afghanistan, Central Asia, eliminates dependency on land transit via Pakistan. Then counterweight to Gwadar, and Gwadar is important for China's CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This is there. Plus, it was a key node of international north-south trade corridor, which would connect Indian Ocean with Russia. Russia also wanted it, and Chahbahar was an important link that would go on. Okay. Now, the challenges faced by India: legal and financial penalties, American sanctions, geopolitical tilt towards China and Pakistan. Now, because of the threat of sanctions, and India cannot afford to oppose America, India will have to vacate Iran. And once there is a vacancy left by India, who would step in? China, Pakistan. So Indian presence is not going to be here, okay? And Chinese and Pakistani presence would increase. So China would have Gwadar and Chahbahar, because Iran would say that, okay, if you're not investing in Chahbahar, we'll get China. This is a threat. Plus, India has some budgetary constraints also. India cannot afford these sanctions. Plus, even if India decides to, well, become brave and brace these American sanctions, India does not have the budgetary India does not have the budgetary deep pockets, to be precise, to extend its operations in Chahbahar. So these are the challenges. Though there is some way forward, it is mentioned in your notes, but it is a kind of way forward which you can write in your answers, but it is actually speaking in geopolitical terms, it won't get us anywhere. Nonetheless, India needs to prepare itself. So that way forward is important from that perspective. Okay, understood? So this is the thing. And now let's quickly move on to third news item, another sad news for India, and that is Trump's 20% Hormuz fee plan. Strait of Hormuz, we all know the crisis, we all know the problem, we all know the importance of Strait of Hormuz. Now, America is saying that we will secure Strait of Hormuz so that ships can pass through it. But to secure Strait of Hormuz, we have to spend a lot of money on war with Iran. Okay? Now, we want to recover that money. So, America is saying that we are doing this. We are freeing Strait of Hormuz for the entire world. The world needs to pay for it. Therefore, for every ship that passes through Strait of Hormuz, well, America would charge a 20% fee. 20% is a lot. Now, that fee would make things really expensive for everyone, and India in particular. This would increase inflation beyond controllable levels in India. Okay, this is really a threatening statement. But the only silver lining in this is that Donald Trump cannot do this legally. Okay, international law prohibits Donald Trump from doing this. But when has international law stopped America from doing anything? So there is this thing also. Okay. Nonetheless, as per international law, well, it is difficult for Donald Trump to do that. And there are, well, other constraints as well. So let's take a look at this issue. Okay. All right. So Trump's 20% Hormuz fee plan. So US President Donald Trump announced a proposal for a 20% transit fee toll on all commercial ships passing through Strait of Hormuz, framed by Washington as reimbursement. The world is not spending money to free Strait of Hormuz. America is. So America is asking for reimbursement. Okay. Now, the declaration immediately drew sharp rebuttals from International Maritime Organization, Iran, and international trade bodies. Well, naturally so. Now, let's take a look at, let's take a look at why Donald Trump cannot do this. Okay. What are the vulnerabilities of this proposal? First of all, international law. United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea, UN clause, Article 37 and 38, allow freedom of passage from international waters. It guarantees the right of unimpeded transit passage for all ships and aircraft through straits used for international navigation. So if Donald Trump does this, well, he will straight away violate Article 37 and 38 of UN clause. And America is part of UN clause. So this is there. Plus another international body called International Maritime Organization. Well, they made a declaration. IMO explicitly affirmed that no country or authority has the legal basis to levy mandatory transit fee or toll on ships passing through international straits or straits of international importance. Okay, so this is there. Then Secretary of State consensus. Legal scholars and international bodies pointed out that charging transit fees violates long-standing US freedom of navigation principles. It is against US policy only. So Donald Trump would be going against its own country. I mean, well, America's own foreign policy. So it would be difficult for him to do so, given that he's losing support in America and Congress and Senate as well in America. So this is there. Plus, a 20% surcharge on cargo value would increase inflation. And that is global inflation. And America is also impacted by global inflation. If there is huge global inflation, and if there is inflation in America, Donald Trump is going to lose voters, some voters. And he's really careful about this thing, this part, domestic politics. So it would be difficult for him to do so. Now, if he does this, what impact will it have on India? Import bill will definitely increase. For every $1 increase in per barrel increase in crude oil, well, India's import bill increases by $2 billion. That's a lot. So if your crude oil increases by $1 only, $1 per barrel, India's import bill increases significantly. If this increases, it widens India's current account deficit. If this happens, rupee depreciates vis-a-vis dollar. And when this happens, all hell breaks loose. Foreign investors get out of India, inflation rises further, investments go down, rupee depreciates. Well, that is there. Okay, all sorts of things happen. So this is problematic. Inflation spike and energy security and supply disruptions, potential rationing for industrial consumers. You all know what happened when Strait of Hormuz was blocked. Some rationing of LPG started, right? This would increase. So yeah, this is the issue. Now, well, what can we do to protect ourselves? First of all, again, we have discussed this: strategic petroleum reserves, increase the capacity of this, diversification of import routes and sources, use other trade routes for, well, your import-export needs, expand crude contracts with Atlantic basin suppliers, like expand crude oil contracts, buy crude oil from America, Brazil, Guyana, non-Hormuz corridors, okay? Use pipelines bypassing Hormuz, like Saudi Arabia's Red Sea ports, but we have discussed these Red Sea ports are also, well, being blockaded by Houthis. Nonetheless, use other things. For example, this is a very important port in Iran, Oman, Duqm port. India is also developing this Duqm port. Look at its location. If Saudi Arabia and UAE build pipelines to Oman, India can buy this crude oil from Duqm port, okay, completely bypassing Bab el-Mandeb Strait and Strait of Hormuz, right? So this is important for India. So India can look for this. And yes, transition yourself towards a non-fossil fuel based economy. Reduce your dependence on fossil fuels, because you cannot predict what is going to happen in future as far as Middle East is concerned. So reduce your dependence, okay? Become Atmanirbhar as far as energy is concerned, self-reliant. This is the only long-term solution for this problem. India needs to be self-reliant as far as energy is concerned. So yeah, that's about it. And with that, we finish today's current affairs lecture. So I hope it added value to your preparation. I don't hope. I'm sure it added value to your preparation. Now, if you want to add more value, you need to be consistent and regular with this lecture series. So make sure that you make this lecture series a part of your daily routine, number one. And you do not forget to revise this lecture from the notes provided by us. Because you see, if you just watch this lecture, you are going to forget these current affairs just like that in a couple of days. But if you want to remember them, at least till your exams, you need to do this necessary revision, 15-minute revision. The notes are on our Telegram channel, and the link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below. So do check it out. On that note, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.